Hi guys, here we are in Washington DC, and I just did a long video yesterday about this topic that I'm going to have to video again, so if it sounds canned, it's because I did it last night at like midnight, and then Screencast wouldn't publish it, so I have to remember to use Screencast 1.0 and not 2.0. Well, here's what I think is important enough to film twice. The Jefferson Memorial, let's come down here and take a look. First of all, there's a few things. Zachary K. Hubbard says that the Pope has 44 numbers, and I had remembered that the Georgia Guidestones, which are on this line right here, are a 44-degree heading to the Washington Monument. So what I was thinking is if I was a Zionist, Freemason, Vatican, Jesuit person, and I was designing a false flag assassination so that I could get these leaders into the bunkers without having questions asked on the surface while creating chaos. And also I was, a really deep symbolist and had to design events by the symbols. I would have the Pope, because they have the 266th Pope arriving on the 266th day, which is a gestation day, and I believe that due to all these numbers, they are going to be visiting this area because this is a conception area, this is Isis's womb, and all these numbers are about gestation. So I believe that we are going to see Obama and the Pope walking right around here. Just all the symbolism of the 266 leads me to that this is a conception event. Also on this line right here is a conception heading of it's actually 269. Over here it says 268. If you draw it out longer, it's 269. And that is 3 days more than 266, and I just need to also mention that 269 as a date, 9/26, is the 269th day of the year. So that's also 3 days later. So all those numbers work out really nicely for them. But this heading here is the 44 heading. And let me show you that. Well, first of all, let me show you how Google does this. When I set this down, it was 44. Up here, it's going to look like 47. And this has to do with the slippage or distortion, having to do with the maps or something that I don't understand about the headings. Let me just show you that. All right, and then I'll show you this one. If I draw this out long enough, it's 44. It has to go a little longer. I think they're most accurate about, see, it's getting there. Getting there. A little bit more and it'll be 44. So anyway, if you drag this all the way up to Washington DC and you lay it down, it's a 44, but if you pick it up again over there, maybe it's this one. Yeah. This one, it is, yesterday I measured this, it was 44. Oh look, it's 444 on the map. We have to see where this is. Oh, it looks like Nowheresville. Let's just go all the way here. All right. Well, this yesterday in the video that I just shot that won't publish, this also happens in Google Earth, but you come back and you measure the same thing and it's different. Yesterday I have this on video that it was 44 degrees when you drop it. But anyway, you can see that it's different from the 47 that I just showed you. I believe this is 44 degrees. Most of the time when I measure that, that's 44 degrees. Plus, we know that we know the nefarious symbolism and warnings of the Georgia Guidestones. If you don't know that, I don't actually have a video that specializes in the Georgia Guidestones, but there are plenty of them out there. But this is where I talk about the 816 number. This is really where it all started. It showed up in other places too, but this was kind of like the big place. They put in a cube that had 816 on it, and I think they took that cube out, but it's still, oh look, there's Simpsonville on the way. So as we scroll in again, just showing you this this skull again, and I always like to point out this military installation right on the back. This will be the visual cortex of the skull, and it is looking west. And this looks like a little chip or something, like right on the back of the neck. And this would be the same place in the Matrix where they would, you know, have you corded at the top of, this would be your 33rd vertebrae. So they have, looks like they have a military installation there. But what I am interested in is this Isis and Osiris installation, the relationship with George Washington, because of the Washington Monument, the Washington Monument being on the 44th, heading from the Georgia Guidestones, the 44 numerology, and the video that I just did where where we found the numbers 23, 923, and 927 in the Pope's birthday, and what that all might mean. Since the Pope has both the 23 and the 27, let me fix this thing in his as prominent dates in his in the algorithms from his birthday. I'm kind of thinking that there's going to be an injury or a near-death experience for him, and then he will finally die on the 27th, which is also the birthday of the Jesuit order, and he's the first Jesuit Pope in a long time. Now, I know people are going to be like, how can you be predicting this? It is scary to predict these things, and these are just their plans. If this doesn't happen, I'm going to suspect that positive military or positive intervention on the ground caused it not to happen. However, I know people are less likely to believe in positive star people on the ground, but I do believe the reason why, one of the big reasons why I believe that positive star people are intervening on the ground is because I believe that star people are the only people who have the ability to disable nuclear weapons, and that the reason why we have not had any major nuclear weapons, we've only had minor ones, but we haven't had major nuclear weapon news events, is not due to the diplomacy and the wisdom or restraint of these Zionist gangsters. It is due to that when they press the button, the star people disable the nuke. So that is one of, you know, I haven't seen this in public, in person, but you have to look at that logically. It does not make sense that the people in charge have restraint and would not use a nuke. We know that they tried to nuke, from the Karen Hughes interviews, we know that they tried to nuke South Carolina, and the top 50 to 100 top brass of the military were fired when they refused to obey orders to nuke South Carolina. And I think that was 2013 now. I don't remember the year of that, but that was also a big September fiasco. They were trying to create a big apocalypse in that September, so they're probably trying to create something again. Well, what happens is when they are going to kill innocent people, it seems like, or also use a nuclear weapon, that something happens and their plans are put down. However, when they want to do a staged event like the Roanoke shooting, because because I think nobody gets killed, or if they do, maybe they have agreed to it, maybe they signed something, or they're part of the Masonic order and it's part of their free will, then there's nothing that the star people or the positive military on the ground can do to stop that. So this could be the same thing. If they want this to actually work, it's going to have to be a false flag. It's going to have to be fake, because nobody can really stop them if they're not going to hurt anybody and they're just going to film something. So that's one of my speculations. I'm going to be really surprised if nothing happens, because all these numbers are really stacking up here for something. In the video that didn't publish, I talked a lot about the Jefferson Memorial. And so let me just show you, this distance is 1.19 miles from the Jefferson Memorial to the top of ISIS's head, right here. And it is a 0-degree heading. So, and going the other way, it should be, I think it should be 360. oh no, 180, it's 180. Nope, maybe I didn't do this right. Let me just make sure. Oh, 180. I had originally thought that the Jefferson Memorial was important here because it was the bottom of the cross, and I was thinking that the cross here, that they were going to use the cross symbolically and the conception point for these false flag assassinations. However, if you look at this area, this is the bottom of the cross, the Capitol building, and the cross is facing the west. So this would be the death of the sun, really. And maybe they're referring to, you know, the Son of God, because the sun dies in the west and it rises in the east. So anyway, it does cross right here. It doesn't actually cross right at the Washington Monument. It crosses, I think it's, I measured this, but I forgot what it was. Let's see. It crosses, yeah, 0.07 miles from this, from the Washington Monument, which would be the conception point. But the cross here is well within the conception vessel. You can see this. If you haven't seen my videos about this area, I have drawings of Isis, Horus. This is Horus Senior, I hope, who is also Osiris. And in the video that didn't publish yesterday that I'm going to try to redo, I talked about how George Washington and our forefathers do worship a god that we don't know. I hadn't heard the name of until yesterday when I studied it, and it's a composite, and it does include Osiris. It's Baal, Jehovah, and Osiris, I think, all together. So that would make sense why we have George Washington's monument being the phallus here of Osiris. Also, just want to point out, in case you haven't seen my videos before, welcome to my channel. And I know that sometimes the information's a little dizzying. Just hang in there, and it'll be, the clues will kind of clump together after a while. And I'll try to repeat a few things. Here we can see, I have drawings of all this. We can see that her left hand goes to the owl over here, the Capitol building, which is at the bottom of the cross. This is an eyeball, and it has a 33-degree view right here. I believe this is where the Pope's going to be speaking, and he's going to be speaking along this meridian, which is a 269 meridian, through the scope of this 33rd degree. These legs of this is both the legs of the owl, and it's also this eye. See the eye right here? And I talk a lot about eyes, eye symbolism, eye gematria, and more. Also, when I was first looking at the situation, I thought that they were going to probably assassinate them, or whoever they were planning to assassinate. I thought they would do it over here because there is a Solomon temple type of overlay here, and I guess there were sacrificial sites there. Let me see if I can pull that up for you. So I am not sure about my positioning of this. I'm not a Solomon's Temple expert, but I did line these things up. These are, I believe, pillars in the original Solomon's Temple. I had to stretch it because all the dimensions are different, and I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how this goes. This over here, according to this, is the Holy of Holies, and I think these are the pillars that would be the Freemason pillars that make up the arch. So it's very possible that this actually goes over here, and that maybe if I pulled this sideways, I don't know. I don't actually, so I tried it the other way and it didn't really fit, but I don't know where they would do a sacrifice on this Solomon's Temple. Maybe you know, and you can tell me in the comments. I had thought, these could also be the pillars right here. What I had thought when I laid this over is that these pillars were going to line up with this and this, or maybe they should line up with this and this, and that the sacrifice would happen right between there. But now, looking at these other numbers and the 44 gematria association with the Pope and the heading from Georgia Guidestones, I'm thinking it might be more poetic to have this be the direction of the false flag assault and this be the location. So from this position you can see her arms and her curves and the fish here. This is the ancient Egyptian sky goddess fish. Now, one thing I want to point out, when I was looking at some of the writings about Masonic, the strange gods of Masonry, god names that we don't recognize, and most people aren't familiar with Osiris and Isis worship. I am not either. This is, kind of new to me too. But what I want to point out is most of the articles that I read about about Masonic allegiances to strange gods, and I'm not saying the Masons or Freemasons are good. I mean, I'm saying there's probably some well-intentioned ones, and there's probably the whole diversity of well-intentioned and not well-intentioned ones. But here's a logic error that I want to point out. If someone is using the Bible, which is written and edited by the Freemason Francis Bacon and through the Jesuit Vatican, which is also Zionist, if someone is reading that and steeped in that, and they're using that document to call these other Freemasonry gods or behaviors blasphemous or demonic, I think that is possibly an example of controlled opposition, because it is so illogical. Now, I know that humans are illogical. They will stand there, they will hold in their hand a Freemason Vatican document and use that as grounds for logic to call Freemasons blasphemous and that they're worshiping the wrong God. Well, who do you think? I don't know. Can you see the logic error here? I hope you can see it. Leave me a comment if you can see the logic error here. You can't hold a document, you can't hold a propaganda document in your hand and point a finger, because your finger's pointing in ignorance, because all of your information is propaganda. Do you see what I'm saying? So, because what I learned yesterday, and I want to show this to you, I'm going to have to bring it to you in another video, because I'm going to try to keep this one under 20 minutes. I have 3 more minutes. That the god that they worship, and I can't remember the name, it's like a 3-syllable name, and I guess they hold hands and raise their hands and chant and walk in circles. I don't know what they do, but it's a composition name of Yahweh, Baal, and Osiris, and the Yahweh is interchangeable with Jehovah. I believe those are 2 separate dudes. They are not actually gods. They are Anunnaki. They're fallen Nephilim. And we can tell that because they behave badly. They ask for child sacrifice. They do things that logically, a 6-year-old could tell you that is not divine action. So mostly what I want to say is I do want to get into the beliefs of these people to help us understand why all of this is here and what they are planning to do. But I want to point out every article that I reference is written by somebody who doesn't understand that they can't hold propaganda in their hand and use that as a basis to judge. Because the Freemasons, if you look at this from above, if the Freemasons edited it and wrote the Bible, mixing it in with the Torah, and then they give that to you to read, and they teach that in your schools and your churches, and then they go to a different church, and they're the ones in charge. They're the ones who have the libraries. They don't give us the libraries. They have all the information. It's all hidden. We don't get to see that. Think about who has more information than who, and who controls whose information. So we can't stand here and point fingers and say what's blasphemous and what's not. All we can do is say, A, that logic is ridiculous, to point fingers from a point of ignorance when you've been trained by the Freemasons, and B, there's no way that we can know whether their information is better than whether they're on the right track of, whether they're honestly, like what I want to say is whether they're honestly seeking a sincere truth. There's probably a broad spectrum of, from the satanic to the well-intentioned, and it does look for sure like they become satanic after, after just a few degrees. So it's just a tangle there. It's just a tangle. But the thing is, you have to step back far enough to realize that you cannot hold the Bible in your hand and point to something else and say that that's wrong, because you're holding a propaganda document in your hand. You, first of all, you have to decipher that. You have to go back to the older tablets. You have to try to get some information that was not created for commoners, like Egyptian hieroglyphs, or inside things that are written inside Egyptian temples where the commoners weren't allowed, or the Sumerian tablets, which were written for the Sumerian gods, not the commoners. Those are much more reliable than a document that's been created by the Vatican, in which everybody who disagreed with that was killed. All right, so I do want to get into, there's a bunch of strange numbers here, so stay tuned for this, and maybe you can help me figure out, and we can just decide, you know, what, you know, but like it's a Super Bowl game, we can try to look at these numbers and see if we can figure out what they're planning. And, you know, if we're wrong, if it doesn't happen, I think all that means is that there were forces on the ground that stopped it. So I just think it's very interesting, and actually it relieves my stress to try to decode these. So I hope you're having fun, and we'll talk to you soon.